Several months ago, I was coaching some clients and the topic of a website came up. Lisa, how long did it take to put a website together? Well, I made a comment about it's taken me 4 years to update mine. And so today I want to share with you the story of why it took me 4 years to launch my new website. In starting a business, many people get fixated that they need a website, but you really don't need a website to sell your offers. And for service providers, a website is not going to serve as your cash register. It'll be a place where people can check you out for credibility. It's your online storefront 24/7. It's a place to educate people about what you do. But one of the challenges when you start a business and you launch a website is, what are you going to sell? And who are you going to sell it to? And what is the message that you need to connect the two? The other thing many new business owners are challenged with is the fact that if they're a solopreneur, do I use the word we as a company or I? And many people will lean towards we because they want to look like a bigger business. They think they're not going to get hired unless they do that. But in 2018, when I started my business, I started as a StoryBrand certified guide. And my website, my first website, looked like most every other StoryBrand guide, talking about how we waste so much money on marketing and how people don't buy the best products and services. They buy the ones that they understand the quickest. But when I started my business in 2018, previously, I had been working for another organization where I did marketing, communications, customer journey, customer onboarding, community engagement. I had a lot of hats. But when I left that, I decided it was time to launch my own business and become a third-generation entrepreneur. My grandfather had a general store, and my parents were serial entrepreneurs with 6 different businesses that I got to learn from along the way. When I launched my business, like many entrepreneurs, I had trouble finding clients. Working for someone else, I had not taken the time to build a network, and I didn't really know how to do it and what the purpose was. So I was able to leverage 18 years of marketing experience and start working with a few clients. Business was going okay. And what I knew is if I helped my clients and they were happy with their work, they would refer me to others. So one thing I believe in is offering and demonstrating value. So I would attend this weekly networking event in which these startups had their pitch presentations they would practice as if they were giving them to venture capitalists. So I went to provide feedback on their messaging. And at the end of one day, it was about 4 weeks in, this woman approached me and she said, Lisa, your advice is really good, but there's so much more to you than what you're doing here. Well, I was a bit curious and I wanted to know more. What do you mean? And she invited me for coffee. And because I wanted to know what it was, I met her for coffee and ended up finding out she was a transformational coach. And so I booked a 2-day session with her. I felt very comfortable with her, booked that 2-day session to see what she saw that I couldn't see myself. Now, within this 2 days, we examined many of my experiences, both professionally and personally. And what she came up with her analysis is things that were really speaking from my heart that I didn't realize that were even there. There was a bigger vision of what I was here to do. And she told me I would be a leader of leaders. Now, I don't know about you, but I've not seen a job description for a leader of leaders. And I want to step out of the story here to talk about the value of working with a coach. If you don't work with a coach, you need to. Even the top performers around the world have had coaches because coaches can see things in us we don't see in ourselves. We're so wound up with our to-do list and productivity and getting things done and distractions and relationships. We don't have the perspective to see what other people can see inside us. So back to the story. I ended this session knowing I was going to be a leader of leaders, or at least that was what I was told. But she didn't give me any other details. And frankly, I was a little bit frustrated about that. But I do want to call out what the meaning of leaders is. Sure, it can be the top of the organization, but we can also learn to lead up. When we're a solopreneur, we're going to lead ourselves, and all of us lead ourselves every day. So what did I do after hearing that news? There wasn't the clarity. There was no roadmap to follow. And as a person who likes to have a plan, I just told myself perhaps that analysis was wrong. I put the idea on the shelf and I ran from it. And I continued doing business the way that I had. A lot of things were going okay. There was a lot of work, though, to find the right clients. And I came to a turning point in my business where I had to fire my first client. So I should have seen the warning signs. There were red flags all along. I should have known when this woman told me she had worked with 3 other marketing companies and they just couldn't get her message right. But what I heard was a challenge, and I knew I was good at what I could do. So in stepped my ego. I took on the project, and after the 3rd session of working with her, I realized it didn't matter what I said. Her opinion was always right. So I decided to give her back her money, and I walked away. Was it hard? Yes. Was it the right thing to do? Absolutely. Because I was walking in integrity with myself and setting the boundaries on who I would and would not work with. So at that point, I took a step back and I got quiet. And I listened to this nudge in my heart, and this little voice showed up on my shoulder that said, remember that leader of leaders? What if that woman was right? So how do you begin something where you don't know where you're going? And how do you know what first step to take? Well, I had at that point not had any professional photos taken. So I knew I would need at least some personal brand photos. So what did I do? I called a photographer, and imagine that conversation. I need some photos. I'm not really sure what for, but that was my plan. And that was my whole plan. There was no walking in a comfort zone I've been used to, where every detail was planned, knowing what was coming next and having the answers before the questions were even asked. So what was so amazing is as I took a step, a light began to shine on the next one. And at this point, I don't even remember what the next step was, but action creates momentum and things started to fall into place. I used those photos for a new website I launched in the end of 2019. At that point, I'd become a certified business coach. I was a messaging and marketing strategist as well as a copywriter. So put those all together. What do you have? I became a business growth advisor. I was working on building my business while developing myself in the background. Now, if you remember the date of that website launch, the end of 2019, it was only a few months later that we found ourselves in lockdown. And like many people, I had some extra time in my hands to look at what was going on in my life and where did I want to go with my business. There came this turning point that I was waiting for, and I didn't even see it coming. If you remember, there was an app that was popular at that time called Clubhouse. It was a series of audio rooms where people would host a room. They would invite people up on stage. There were questions from the audience. And so I was in a Clubhouse room one evening, and someone asked a question, and the woman on stage, I will never forget her answer. Her answer was, whose filter are you living your life through? And suddenly, I didn't know. All I knew was people told me what I must do. Society told me what I should do to have a successful life. And the marketing gurus told me what I absolutely had to do to run a successful business. That's all I could think about for the following days, looking at different decisions and things I was doing and determining whose filter it was that I was living through. Now, business started getting better, but I felt like something else was missing. And this woman that asked this question from stage, I'd been following her on social media. I really liked how she sounded. She was very inspiring to me. And I knew that at some point, I really just wanted to have a conversation with her. My dream would be to work with her. So I followed her for several months, and she put out this offer that she was launching a new academy for some really deep work. The work was to become a manifestation coach. Now, If you knew me before, you would think this was hilarious. A manifestation coach, that would be the last thing I would do. But I'd always been curious about the law of attraction. And if I was breaking through these filters, why not this? So I eventually thought about it for a few days. It felt right. I signed up and registered, and I felt this great sense of peace about it. There was the next light on the next step of where I was supposed to go. Now, I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to become a manifestation coach, but I will tell you this was the launch of what I've done for the last 2.5 years of some of the most powerful work of self-exploration, seeing who I thought I was, finding clues that told me it wasn't true, and starting to see the glimpses that were ahead. I began to understand that manifestation isn't about what you want. It's about coming back home to understand who you really are. It's about imagining all that you can become. And it's about leaving the parts of you behind that don't need to go with you. It's learning how to heal and, most importantly, knowing how to manage your nervous system to bring you back in alignment with who you are supposed to be. Because what I learn is the closer you walk with how you are created, the more happiness you're going to experience, the more fulfillment that comes, and the more ease and flow that will come into your life. This was a major milestone that gave me a direction on what I was to do in this adventure of becoming. And I realized that my entire life had been built into buying the narrative that we present ourselves as important by how much money we make. We define success based on our accomplishments. And we feel like a failure if we don't drive a certain car or our children do something particularly to get an award. But this was the most amazing journey of my life to discover who I really was. And when I would have a chance for an uncomfortable situation, instead of running the other way as I did before, I embraced it because I knew that was how I was going to grow. I came upon an opportunity where I had a chance to tell my personal story to several hundred people at the launch of my coach and mentor, Mike Kim's best-selling book. And so when I told the story, I got feedback from the people in the audience that they were experiencing it too. I knew there were people who needed to hear this story. And so it birthed this idea of creating a framework and documenting to help people follow this path and have a framework to follow to know how to do it themselves. So why did it take 4 years to create my new website? It wasn't about the design and development. It was designing me and rediscovering who I was after so many people told me who I was not. Once I had that identity well underway, I knew that I had to help others. So as a coach, knowing what offers to create, I know that you need those. And you also need to know what people are going to buy them and who you're talking to. Once I had those in place, the rest was relatively easy. Creating my new website was a really fun project. I got to schedule a photo shoot with this new version of me and finding the right words to say to communicate the story of what it would be like to experience providing the transformation I provide. I had a soft launch of the website a few weeks ago, and the feedback so far has been incredible. Imagine working with a guide who walks alongside you in the process of self-discovery, helping you design the next phase and reinvent the journey of you and your work, and then having the marketing support with having to go tell the story to someone who doesn't understand you at all. If you are interested in pursuing your own reinvention, follow me on LinkedIn or send me a direct message. I'm creating a workshop session and taking names for a wait list. That's going to help you know when it's time to consider reinvention and if it is for you. So be sure to check out the link in the show notes. I hope you were able to get what you needed. And if you like this episode, I would love it if you would subscribe and leave a review. It's how other people can learn about the show. So until next time, go chase your passion, turn it into helping others with purpose, and show up as your personal brand of integrity. It is what will help you live a life of so much more on the way to discovering your legendary self.